Hi, guys, and welcome to the Horror Room. So, this week I thought we would talk about some VHS movies. And I'm not talking about actual VHS movies or the VHS series. I'm talking about movies that have to do with VHS, whether it's, something involved with the story or an aesthetic of the movie. And the first one that usually comes to people's minds is the Blair Witch Project because back when that movie was released, the internet isn't what it is today. People actually thought that it was real due to its found footage style. And, it wasn't until years later that we found out, this is just a really intricate film with lots of detail, lots of lore. I am going to eventually do a review of that movie because I'm very nostalgic for it. Not so much anything else involved in the Blair Witch. But after watching that, I was like, you know what? This is a very interesting film, and I don't think we'll get anything quite like it. And I don't think we really have. But years later, of course, the internet was a little bit different still. Had evolved a little bit, but we had YouTube. But, certain things were being circulated on YouTube, like clips of kind of shock stuff. You still get that today. But back then, you'd see a clip and you're like, is this from a movie? Like, what is this? And that's when I saw the scene from the Poughkeepsie Tapes where he, crawls in behind the woman when she's, duct taped and he stabs her. And, seeing it like that without any context, not knowing what it was from, it was freaky. And a lot of people thought it was real. But it wasn't till I found out, this is part of the movie, I was like, I gotta watch this dang movie. How am I gonna see it? Because it wasn't out in theaters. There was very little info about it. But, thankfully, myself and probably a lot of other people were, how do I word this? Sailing the seven seas of the internet, if you will, for certain things. So, finding this bootleg copy of the movie, because it was distributed to film festivals, that was the only way to watch it for the longest time. It wasn't until years later that we got a physical copy. But I remember when I first saw the Poughkeepsie Tapes, I was like, you know what? This is even better than the Blair Witch. It had that element of, the found footage because they had all the tapes that the killer made himself, but it blended it with this documentary style that was very convincing. If you didn't know this was a fake mockumentary, you'd say, this is crazy. Why have I never heard of this guy? So that kind of evolved the found footage genre into documentary stuff. It was just really fun, really fun. And I was convinced I'll never see another movie like this. But in the years since Poughkeepsie Tapes, since its initial my cat's scratching my chair. We've gotten other films, and I've seen them, and I just want to touch on them because a lot of them are more popular than others. One being Lake Mungo, which is kind of its own documentary, mockumentary type thing with a story. Now, it's very slow-paced, very slow burn. There's not a bunch of jump scares. There's not a bunch of blood and guts. It's mainly, it tries to creep you out little by little until they reveal at the end, which I'm not going to spoil. And I see people recommend this movie all the time. If you want to watch a creepy movie that'll just freak you out, watch this movie. And I went into it thinking oh, this is going to be really creeping me out, leave me feeling creeped out, like Poughkeepsie Tapes did, well, in a different way. Needless to say, when I watched Lake Mungo, I couldn't get into it. And I've watched reviews of it where people tell me this is why you should like it. But that's the great thing about being a fan of horror. Everybody has different opinions, and I'm not saying that Lake Mungo is a bad movie or anything, and that you shouldn't watch it. I think you should watch it and judge it for yourselves, but it just didn't really click for me. So then we have another movie that came along and kind of, tried to reestablish what it was to be like a found footage movie, um, with somebody filming their own stuff. And that's Creep. Not only was there the first one, there was the second one, and now there's a TV series apparently. Um, Now, I did watch both of the movies. I haven't seen the TV show. It's one that I feel like maybe eventually down the line I should revisit and give another shot. But again, I don't know. There was something about the movie that I didn't find creepy or, necessarily like I wasn't getting into it. The mask that the guy uses, his peach fuzz wolf mask, I do like the mask. I think it's pretty cool. It reminds me of like those really bad 90s Halloween masks that you'd see everywhere. And, a werewolf was like the big popular one. Um, I don't think they had the werewolf hands quite at that point. So, not sure what mask was used in that movie, but I'd be interested to know. Well, he doesn't have the werewolf hands, but, they started selling him with the werewolf hands, which I think is pretty cool. Um, so yeah, Creep again. I wanted to like it. I couldn't get into it. Um, there's another movie. I'm just going to throw it in as an honorable mention. Um, Honorable. Be My Cat, which is a very bizarre movie that is about like a fan who's obsessed with. I want to say it's Anne Hathaway. Yeah, he's like a foreign fan that's obsessed with her, and he wants her to star in his film, and he casts these different females, and I don't know. I mean, some of the scenes I'm like, okay, I can see what they're going for, but it just would drag, and the kills were just kind of like, eh. Like, I don't know. That's one that I would actually say I wouldn't. Well, actually, I think the next three I wouldn't recommend. So there's that one. Then there's another one that kind of caught my attention, and it said it was similar to like Megan is Missing, which that's another one that people love. I almost forgot about that one. I didn't think it was that great. There's like a reenactment in the middle of the movie that's kind of funny. Other than that, I didn't think it was like that shocking. It tried to be like a little mockumentary slash found footage movie. And I guess if you're a teenager watching it, it's probably like the creepiest thing you've ever seen, but I couldn't get into it. So you have that, you have Be My Cat. What was the other one? I just had it, and so there's this one that I found, and you can look up the poster on Google. I cannot show it on YouTube. It's called the Cohasset Snuff Film, I believe. And the poster is like a dead body with the head like completely mutilated. Now, I don't think that's a real image. I think it's like, a makeup effect or a prop of some sort. But that is the most misleading poster because I thought for the longest time, I was like, this is probably the most boring movie that tricks you to watching it by using like some extreme word or making you think it's going to be like, oh, it's creepy. I think it's also another teenage melodrama horror where some kid is like gonna kill people. I don't know. It's not that great. And then here recently, I watched one that I saw a lot of hype for online, and people were saying this is the next Poughkeepsie Tapes, and I was like, wait a minute. Okay, you got my attention. The movie's called Looky Loo. It has some brutal killings in it, but they're like, I don't know, kind of samey. I mean, the guy's just using a knife. It's got more of a voyeuristic quality, which Poughkeepsie Tapes had that too, because when he's stalking Cheryl Dempsey, he's like filming her from afar. You see them doing this throughout the movie, but that's not the whole movie. And of course, it's set up like a documentary. Not saying that this movie had to be, but it's literally just the guy going around filming And there's like little instances where like he finds a flyer or something, or maybe there's like a news story about like what's going on in the town. But it just really, by the end of it, I was like, wow. And I mean, I'm not saying that, the director shouldn't have tried uh, this approach, because it's probably, it gets a lot of people to like. I mean, I've seen other people praise this movie. Maybe it gets under their skin, but to me, it just too little, too long. Um, so again, it did not satisfy that Poughkeepsie Tapes itch that I've been having. Maybe I should get it checked out. Um, but then earlier in 2025, I saw a trailer for a movie, and I was like, "Ooh, this movie looks really interesting." And I was like, "I need to check that movie out." And then I completely forgot about it until this year, and I finally got around to watching it. And this is one that surprisingly, I saw a lot of people talking negatively about and saying like this movie's stealing ideas from a bunch of different movies. Didn't see him mention Poughkeepsie Tapes. Now I'm not accusing the movie of stealing stuff from Poughkeepsie Tapes, but as I was watching this, I kept noticing beats in this movie that were like one for one with the way Poughkeepsie Tapes structured itself. And not to say that's a bad thing, because there's a lot of movies with similar structures or story beats that work in their own terms and they're fantastic films. And this, to me, is one of them. So if you like Poughkeepsie Tapes, you gotta watch Strange Harvest. This movie was great. Like, I just gotta say, they have, the interviews with the police detectives. They talk about, finding the person's house and how clean it is. There's no fingerprints. Finding, X or evidence later on. The killer sending, like, letters to them. There's also this strange symbol that it's basically, it's like a triangle with three dots and a dot in the middle. And they link it to other things throughout the movie, and they say, is this all part of the same thing, or is it just coincidence? And I like that they leave it open-ended. There is a little bit of a supernatural element, but they don't explicitly explain it. They leave it up to you to kind of like piece together if, it's even something that's happening, or if it's just kind of, I mean, it technically is happening. But I thought this movie was great, and it had some crazy deaths in there that I was not expecting. I don't want to spoil anything, but the very first thing we find out involves a family and buckets. And from that moment in, I was like, okay, this movie has got my attention. Also has probably the weirdest but funniest name for a villain in a movie, Mr. Shiny. And he's got a unique mask, which, I don't know, it kind of, like, it reminds me of, like, these little doll things in this animated Studio Ghibli movie. I cannot remember what they're called, but, I mean, the crossover between horror and Studio Ghibli, I don't think that's probably a very niche market, but you might know what I'm talking about. They're from Spirited Away. But anyways, hold on. Hey, what are you doing up there? We already talked about Walking Dead, Kissy. Come on, let's get down. There you go. But anyways, so this movie, I gotta say, is probably one of the better mockumentaries that I've seen. And I don't want to spoil it for you guys. When I was watching it, it was on Hulu. It might still be on there. But I would definitely recommend it. If you enjoyed the Poughkeepsie Tapes, even like a little bit, I don't think it's better than Poughkeepsie Tapes, but I think it literally is right on par. Like, if I was to do a double feature with Poughkeepsie Tapes, this movie would fit perfectly with it. What order you do them in, I guess that would be up to you. But I would probably still put Poughkeepsie Tapes second because I think it has the more intricate story and character elements. This one still has that too, but it's a different beast, is basically the best way I could put it. Um, so, in a nutshell, we've seen lots of different VHS style movies where they have found footage or the killer's recording stuff. Strange Harvest, though, it doesn't have so much of that, but they do have like instances in the movie where someone else was filming or they get security footage. So it has a little bit of that element, but it's kind of a new age style. And there's other movies that are doing that. There's one that another YouTuber made called Shelby Oaks, I believe, that has some of that in there. And then there's one I just read about recently. It had a very weird name, but it's told through like security footage inside someone's house. I just saw another trailer involving a ring cam. So they're taking the idea and kind of evolving it. And, you know, we don't have to have mockumentaries every time. It doesn't have to be someone with a VHS camcorder every time. You can kind of mix these elements and make something unique. But I just wanted to get on here and, you know, talk about some of these movies, what I think of them. I do eventually want to do an in-depth review of Blair Witch because it's a very divisive movie. I've done a review of Poughkeepsie Tapes on my old horror channel. I will try to remember to link that below, but if I forget, remind me down in the comments and I'll make sure that gets on there. But I guess the takeaway from this video is if you haven't watched Strange Harvest, you really should check it out. I couldn't recommend it enough. The other movies, not so much, but you know, if you want to watch like Mungo or Creep, feel free. It's your choice. But I wouldn't recommend Looky Loo or Cohasset Snuff. But you know, I'm not your mom. You can watch whatever you want. They just didn't work for me. So, well, I better get Kissy out of here before she decides to jump on more shelves. But thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next week.